Story 1. The Basement Apartment. Moved into my first apartment when I was 19. It was a basement unit in an old house built in the 1920s. The rent was cheap and I didn't ask many questions. The landlord seemed eager to rent it out quickly. The apartment had this weird layout. The bedroom was at the very end of a long hallway, and there was this door in the hallway that was always locked. The landlord told me it was just storage and that I didn't need access to it. Everything was fine for the first week. Then one night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Right above my head. I figured it was just the people who lived upstairs, so I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep. But then I remembered something. The landlord lived upstairs, and he lived alone. He was a 70-year-old man. These footsteps sounded like someone pacing back and forth quickly, almost running. The footsteps continued for about 20 minutes before they suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. The next morning, I asked my landlord if he had been up late. He looked at me confused and said he'd been asleep since 9 p.m. He was a heavy sleeper and took medication that knocked him out cold every night. I heard the footsteps again the next night, and the night after that, always around 3 a.m. Always the same pattern of pacing. One night I decided I had enough. I grabbed my phone and went upstairs. I knocked on the landlord's door. No answer. I knocked louder. Still nothing. I tried the doorknob, and it was unlocked, so I pushed it open. The apartment was completely dark and silent. I called out for my landlord, but got no response. I turned on the light. The entire upstairs apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no belongings, nothing. Just bare walls and floors. But I had been in this apartment before. When I first looked at the place, it had been fully furnished. I ran back downstairs, and that's when I noticed something. That locked storage door in my hallway was slightly open. Just a crack. It had always been locked before. I slowly walked towards it. My heart was pounding. I could hear my own breathing. I pushed the door open. It was a staircase leading upstairs to the empty apartment above me. But that didn't make sense. Why would there be a staircase in my apartment leading to the landlord's place? Why was it locked? I never got an answer. I moved out the next day. I tried calling the landlord, but his number was disconnected. I drove by the house a week later and there was a for sale sign in the yard. I looked up the property records online. The house had been empty for 3 years. There was no landlord. No one had lived there since 2019 when an elderly man died in the upstairs apartment. I still have no idea who I gave my rent checks to. Story 2. The Night Shift. This happened when I was working as a security guard at a shopping mall during college. I usually worked the closing shift, which meant I'd be there until around midnight, making sure everything was locked up. The mall had this creepy vibe after hours. All the lights would be dimmed and you could hear the building settling. The echoes of your own footsteps would follow you around. One night I was doing my final walkthrough before locking up. I was on the second floor near the food court when I saw someone sitting at one of the tables. It was a woman. She was just sitting there staring straight ahead. I walked over and told her the mall was closed and she needed to leave. She didn't respond. She didn't even look at me. She just kept staring forward. I said it again. Louder this time. Still nothing. I reached out to tap her shoulder and my hand went right through her. Not like through a ghost or anything. She just wasn't there. I was hallucinating or something. I stepped back and she was gone. The chair was empty. I convinced myself I was just tired and seeing things. I finished my rounds and went to the security office to watch the cameras before leaving. I was scanning through the different camera feeds when I saw her again, on camera. Sitting at the same table in the food court, I looked at the timestamp. It was from 5 minutes ago, when I had been standing right there. But in the video, I wasn't there. It was just her, sitting alone at the table. I switched to the live feed of the food court. Empty. I switched back to the recorded footage from 5 minutes ago. There she was. Clear as day. I started rewinding the footage to see when she sat down. I went back 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. She was sitting in that same position in every frame. Same clothes, same posture. Not moving. I went back to the very beginning of the day's footage, 6 a.m. when the mall opened. She was already there, sitting in the exact same position. She had been there for 18 hours without moving. I quit that job the next day. I never went back to that mall. I looked it up later online and found out that 10 years ago, a woman had a heart attack in that food court and died at one of the tables. She was found 6 hours later because no one noticed her sitting there. The table she died at was the same table where I saw her. Story 3. The missed call. My best friend Jake and I went on a road trip across the country the summer after we graduated high school. We were driving through Nevada in the middle of nowhere when Jake's car broke down. It was around 9 p.m. and we were on this empty desert highway. No other cars, no buildings, no cell service. We decided to walk and try to find help. After about an hour of walking, we saw a light in the distance. As we got closer, we realized it was a gas station, one of those old rundown places that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. There was one guy working there. He was probably in his 60s. He told us he could call a tow truck, but it would be at least 2 hours before anyone could get out there. We decided to wait. Jake went to the bathroom while I stayed in the store. The clerk wasn't really talking much. He just kept staring at me. It was making me uncomfortable, but I tried to ignore it. My phone suddenly got a bar of service and I felt it buzz. I had a missed call from Jake from 3 minutes ago, but Jake was in the bathroom. He had been in there the whole time. I walked over to the bathroom and knocked. No answer. I opened the door. Empty. I ran back to the counter and asked the clerk if he saw my friend leave. He just stared at me with this blank expression and said, "What friend? You came in here alone." I felt my blood run cold. I ran outside. Jake's car was gone. The highway was empty. I called Jake's phone. It rang once, and then someone picked up. But it wasn't Jake's voice. It was a woman. She was crying. She kept sighing, "Please help us. We're still here. We've been here so long." I hung up and ran. I ran down the highway in the direction we had come from. I ran for what felt like hours. Eventually, I saw headlights. A truck stopped and picked me up. It was a family. They drove me to the nearest town 50 miles away. I filed a missing person report for Jake. The police went to look for the gas station I described. They couldn't find it. They checked all the gas stations in a 100-mile radius. None of them matched my description. Jake's car was found 3 days later, parked on the side of the highway exactly where it had broken down. Jake wasn't in it. There was no sign of him. That was 6 years ago. Jake is still missing. I still get calls from his number sometimes late at night. I don't answer them anymore, but I can hear the crying through the voicemail. Story 4. The photograph when my grandmother passed away, I was given the task of going through her house and sorting out her belongings. She had lived in the same house for 60 years, so there was a lot to go through. I was up in the attic, going through boxers of old photographs when I found one that made me freeze. It was a photo of me, standing in my grandmother's backyard. I was probably about 7 years old in the photo. But here's the thing. I was wearing clothes I had never owned, and I was standing next to a man I didn't recognize. He had his hand on my shoulder, and we were both smiling at the camera. I had no memory of this photo being taken. I had no memory of this man. I looked at the back of the photo. There was a date written in my grandmother's handwriting. June 15th, 1998. June 15th, 1998 was my 7th birthday. I remembered that day clearly. We had a party at my parents' house, not at my grandmother's house, and I had never been to my grandmother's house on my birthday that year. I called my mom and asked her about the photo. She went silent when I described it to her. After a long pause, she told me to throw it away and never mention it again. I didn't throw it away. I kept asking questions. Finally, my mom told me the truth. I had a twin brother. He died when we were 7 years old. June 15th, 1998. The day of our birthday, he drowned in my grandmother's pool during the party. My parents never told me because the trauma made me forget he ever existed. They thought it was better to let me forget than to force me to remember. The man in the photo was my uncle. My mother's brother. He was supposed to be watching us that day. He's the one who found my brother in the pool. My uncle killed himself 2 months after my brother died. The guilt destroyed him. I went back to the attic and looked through more photos. I found dozens of pictures of me and my twin brother. I had been looking at them all day and thinking it was just multiple photos of me at different ages, but it wasn't me in all of those photos. It was him. My brother. The brother I didn't remember. I found one more photo at the bottom of the box. It was taken the day before he died. Me and my brother standing side by side. We looked identical. Same smile. Same eyes. Same everything. On the back my grandmother had written, "The boys, together. Forever." I put all the photos back in the box. I sealed it up and left it in the attic. I never went back to that house. But sometimes late at night I'll look in the mirror and I swear I see him standing behind me. My twin. The other half of me. The half. For God. Story 5. The voicemail last year I started getting voicemails from my own phone number. I know that sounds impossible, but I'd check my phone and see that I had a missed call from my own number and a new voicemail. The first few times I thought it was a glitch or a scam. But then, I listened to one of the voicemails. It was my voice. But I wasn't saying anything I remembered saying. In the voicemail I was whispering. I was saying, "Don't go to sleep tonight. Stay awake. Please stay awake." I obviously didn't leave myself that voicemail. Someone was using some kind of AI voice clone or something to mess with me. The voicemails kept coming. Every few days I'd get a new one. Always my voice. Always saying disturbing things. Check the closet. Someone's in the house. You're not alone. I reported it to the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do. These kinds of scams were becoming more common. Then one night I got a voicemail that made my blood run cold. It was my voice again, but this time I was screaming. Screaming for help. Begging someone to stop. And then the voicemail cut off with a sound that I can only describe as something wet and heavy hitting the floor. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept my lights on and my door locked. The next morning, I found something on my doorstep. It was my phone. The exact same model. The exact same case. Even the same crack on the screen that my phone had. But my phone was in my pocket. I was holding it. I picked up the phone from the doorstep and turned it on. It opened without a password. To my home screen. With all my apps, all my photos, all my contacts. I checked the call history. The last call made from this phone was to my number. 10 minutes ago. I was holding two identical phones. Both of them mine. Both of them real. I threw the second phone in the trash. I tried to forget about it. But the voicemails kept coming, and now they're different. Now when I listen to them, I can hear two voices. Both of them, mine. And they're having a conversation. One of them is screaming for help. The other one is laughing. I don't know which one is me.